Hi, I'm Alex Roman, Executive Editor for Metro Magazine, and welcome back to METROspectives. Today, my guest is Julie Chalmers, General Manager at Hotard Coaches Inc. in New Orleans. Julie joins me to discuss being named one of Metro's 2025 Women in Transportation, her career in the industry, and much more. Thanks again for joining us, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Well, Julie, thanks for joining me. You've been named one of our Women in Transportation for 2025. So first, congratulations. And
Thank
again,
you.
thanks for being part of the podcast. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm great.
Great. So let's start with, because we cover public transportation and motor coach. Motor coach people tend to be part of the family and they move into the family business in essence. Public transportation people often kind of mistakenly find themselves part of public transportation. Um, Curious how you became involved with Hotard Hotard Coaches and how the industry in general.
Well, I guess I am a little bit of both. So I am fourth generation Hotard family. So I did grow up with the Hotard name, although I did not see myself as ever working in the family business. My dad was not a part of it. I lived in the city, and the company that my uncle was running the company outside of the city, and I just it just wasn't in my cards, so I thought. But after, after switching a job at some point and not being at work, my uncle called me and said he was looking for an outside salesperson and would I be interested in that? And so that was back in 2007. And I joined the company and really have not looked back since then. So.
Great. Talk a little bit about your time there. And I know you've held a few positions there at Hotard and with the Ahi family, I guess. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that evolution and where you are today and maybe some of the some of the milestones you've hit over the years?
Yes, it's been interesting to say the very least. So when I first joined, I was actually working for Calco, which at the time was a separate company from Hotard, but charter motor coach company, and I went to work for Calco and pretty I went to work in January of 2007, and that summer Callan and a business partner purchased Hotard. And so then we were all together again. And so we were family owned and pretty uncomplicated, I should say, until 2012 when we joined with All Aboard America and formed All Aboard America Holdings, and we were purchased by private equity. And that was my first experience with private equity and definitely a big learning curve. I was, very lucky to be, exposed to everything and to have a lot of education. That company sold us a few years later. So we went on to our second set of private equity. And again, I've just been very fortunate that we've had some really good people join the company. We acquired more companies and our footprint has grown. And then 2 years ago, we were purchased by a publicly traded company out of Australia. So to go from family, private equity, publicly traded, it's definitely kept things interesting. And it's nice to learn all these different aspects of business.
Right. But well, can you talk a little bit about the dynamics of working with your family and how that kind of evolved? And also I'm curious, how coming in, how that played in coming in as a woman in the industry. Did you feel like certain hurdles that you needed to overcome to be accepted, or like, just certain hurdles were put in place that you didn't necessarily expect to be there?
Was, coming in as a family member, looking back on it now, I'm really lucky that I was hired in the position I was hired in. I was outside sales. I was given a lot of time to really learn the business, and work my way up. And in the beginning, almost didn't want people to know that I was a Hotard because I
Right.
didn't want them to think that I was just given this job.
It's a lot
I
of
wanted
pressure
them.
too. I mean, you have a big family in the industry.
It's a big family in the industry, um, and so and some people love them, and so it's a lot of pressure, but I wanted to really feel like I had earned my own, and so I went from salesperson to director of sales to general manager. I've and so that has been that's been really good for me. As coming into the industry again, like coming up through the sales world, it's a little bit different. Well, it's a lot different than, let's say, I would have been hired on as a mechanic or even a dispatcher. The sales world is tends to be a little bit more female heavy, which helped because you didn't I didn't necessarily feel like a fish out of water. As you continue to grow in the industry, sometimes now in the position I'm in now, I look around the room and you're like, oh, there's not that many women in the room now. Um, but I feel like maybe it's because, you said this earlier, the charter motor coach world is a lot of family businesses, and
Mhm.
we tend to be very supportive of each other. That you're in a room and you might be the only female, you might be one of three, but you're in a room with people who want to see you succeed as well. I think when it's people who come from outside the motor coach industry and come in, that sometimes they're not as used to seeing women in these different positions, or, they have preconceived notions that it's buses and it's just all men. But, I think we're very lucky that we're in a very supportive industry.
Yeah, gosh, I have a few questions to follow up on that, but let's start first, I guess, with your milestones there. Other than surviving change, obviously you're able to survive change quite well. Can you talk about some of the milestones there during your career?
Yeah, so one of the things first when I was first hired, I was tasked with trying to acquire all of our incoming NFL teams as customers. At the time, we were transporting one, and that was my first kind of real challenge. And so, heading into that first season, we had one team, and then heading into the second season, we had all but one. And then by the time the third season rolled around, we had every team that visited, and we'd been that way since. And so, that's something, and I no longer handle, the NFL when they come to visit, someone else in our office does,
Mhm.
but it's nice seeing that and, knowing that, okay, we started that and we've been able to hold on to that. And that's, you know, kind of like a little project that I see in every year when we check off all the names. I'm really proud of that. But then also when I started, we were really charter motor coaches, and we did not do anything in the employee shuttle world. And we were given the opportunity to bid on some of that work, and it was really scary. And at first, we're like, I don't know if we're cut out for that, if we're really made for this. But we decided to go after it, and that part of our business has really grown, and so that's been great as well. We also have been working with Viking, so we I was able to to work on the front end of that and help put together a proposal and secure that business. And so our motor coaches follow Viking up and down the river, and transport their guests when they get off. So all these different little wins, it's really neat to be a part of and to see how our footprint has changed. I think it's really easy to come to work and feel like, okay, you do the same thing day in and day out, and then when you get an opportunity like this and people ask you to reflect a little bit, it's like, wow, we have accomplished a lot.
Right. That's perspective. Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of people don't have that perspective on their career, or they don't get it until, they're getting close to retirement, and they start reflecting on all their accomplishments. Can you talk a bit about how the business has evolved? I know there's been ownership changes and that sort of thing. But with COVID and companies finding ways to run smarter and find new avenues for business. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution at Hotard?
Yeah, that's a great question because, in some ways you look at us and you're like, we are completely different than we were 5 years ago. But our core values really haven't changed. And I think COVID makes some of that a little bit harder. So, for example, during the pandemic, we went completely paperless with our drivers, which meant they no longer had to come into the office and get their work orders out of their mailbox. And so, on the surface, that's great. But then you realize you have to go out of your way now to really try and see them and talk to them and make sure that they're doing okay because they don't have to come into the office. It's a little bit harder to catch them and to have those moments with them. As we continue to grow and as the driver pool gets bigger and our offices spread. So we have our headquarters are here in New Orleans, but we also have offices in Lafayette and Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and we're getting ready to reopen in Baton Rouge. Making sure that that feeling of being part of our community and being part of a team continues and that these drivers don't feel like, hey, I'm out here on my own and, I don't have any support. So, we try really hard. We work really hard to stay in touch with everybody. But, those changes of getting bigger and more technology and less contact, it makes it a lot harder than it used to be.
Right. And I mean, getting back to kind of finding your place in the industry and that sort of thing. Was there enough women there to help mentor you through that process? And if so, are you kind of carrying that on, that kind of legacy, with other folks, excuse me, other people at Hotard, or other people in the industry?
Absolutely. So I still remember the first person that I met at the first conference I attended was Donna Edmonds with Young Transportation in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was nervous. It was my first business trip. I was by myself and I got on the bus from the airport to go to the hotel and she immediately introduced herself and just I felt like really took me under her wing.
Mm.
And she is such a good example of customer service and just everything that I wanted to be as a salesperson in the industry. And she was an open book. Anything she could do to help, she absolutely helped me. I was also very lucky that, Callan really brought me everywhere. And so I was able to just watch and learn. Um, and again, I think somewhat unique to our industry, because it was maybe a little more acceptable because I am his niece, you know. Um, I've definitely been in situations prior to working in this industry where you don't feel supported, whether it be from a male boss or a female boss, people are very competitive and, I know what that feels like. So absolutely, we try really hard to offer continuing education to everybody and to not assume that, oh, she doesn't want the job or we would never put a female in that position. And, I think that's a change that's coming through our industry as a whole, but definitely something that we work really hard for here as well. I'm lucky that I do work for a company in the AHI team and on the Kelsian level that they really believe in continuing education. And so the fact that that's available to me helps me, and I know how important it is, it helps me to be able to offer it to everybody on our team.
Right.
So, making sure that everybody is always improving. And, obviously, I wish everybody would stay with Hotard forever, but, I do feel a sense of responsibility for people to learn from their time here. And if they decide to move on or to try out other career paths, I want them to feel like they've gotten something at Hotard and they take that away and that they do feel supported. Because I do remember what that felt like, in other positions when you felt like you were working against people who should have been on your team.
Well, Julie, thanks again for joining me. I probably have a couple more questions, and I think, maybe on that note of mentorship and that sort of thing, how do you see, the industry being able to attract more women, or maybe to be more accepting of the women that are coming in as part of their family business, or that finding their way into the industry, even through sales and that sort of thing. How can you attract more women, and how can you keep the women in the industry, escalating up the ladder, so to speak?
Yes, when I first started, organizations were extremely flat. You were
Mhm.
typically, the CEO, probably the driver, director of maintenance, and the safety guy. And you usually did all of those jobs,
Right.
and, you were usually male. I think as we continue to grow as an industry and really, develop our product and really develop our companies, there are a lot more different roles. So initially when I first started, companies didn't have a director of marketing. You had somebody who did sales and marketing, and that usually meant you sat at your desk and answered the phone.
Right.
And so, as we grow and as things become more competitive, I think there are a lot more roles that are available and roles that are probably, a little bit more attractive to women
Mhm.
than, I don't want to have to worry about, maintenance on the buses, or, I don't want to just do HR. There's a variety of roles that are really attractive and I think will attract women. And then as they get into this industry and they see really how great it is and how much fun it can be and how much you can learn and how much your job can change, that they stick with it. Whereas in the past, there really was no room for growth. But and yeah, I've been in the industry for 18 years now, which doesn't seem that long, but there's been a lot of change, in those 18 years as far as possibilities and
Mhm.
options and different jobs that were not available when I first started. So I think that it's really important for people to realize, like, I don't have to just go into sales, or I don't have to just go into HR,
Right.
that there are a bunch of other roles in a company that I can handle.
Yeah. And what kind of advice would you give somebody entering the industry, or entering, kind of the people movement industry in general?
So I think learn everything. This is an industry where we do not operate in silos. And so the more familiar you are with everything, every aspect of your business, the more valuable you are. So, if marketing and social media is your thing, understanding what your drivers go through on a day-to-day business, day-to-day occurrence is really important. If accounting is your thing, understanding your customer base and understanding, just really when, how the money comes in and how it leaves, I think is really, really important.
Right.
So, I think if your personality is one that you really want to observe and see things from the high level and big picture, this is the industry for you, and that will make you the most successful. I also highly recommend, grabbing onto a mentor, meeting people, taking advantage of all of our industry organizations. I'm really lucky that Hotard is a part of the International Motor Coach Group, and I've had, some great meetings through there, and being members of ABA and UMA, and just being able to have that support from other people and other people in the industry, I think is really, really important. This industry is really all about relationships, and um, you know cultivating and creating those relationships is really, can make you successful.
Well, Julie, thanks for the time. I really appreciate the conversation, and congratulations again on being named one of our Women in Transportation for 2025.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Alex.
Thanks.